anxietycenter.com.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Can hear me well, yes.
I made a list of the things you need to do and the questions you ask yourself when you're containing your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things it says is where in the behavioral process could you have change so that so the result is not this anxiety. Do you recall what I'm saying? Wait, let me get my list. Wait a second.
Sure. I can just go there too if you're drawing it from the website.
Okay, so obviously I should have had it by now. So it's basically like, what are you thinking right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's behind those thinkings? What decision did you arrive at?
Mm-hmm.
What are the consequences that your thinking and decisions have brought out in you? And how can you change so that you can have different consequences for yourself and others? Do you remember that line of thinking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess that's part of containing. So it's saying if you don't like the results of your thinking and reactions, which obviously it leads to anxiety, it says where along the behavioral process could you have made a different decision so you have different results, which obviously the results are anxiety. And I thought the behavioral process for me would have when I made the decision that because of my imperfections or weaknesses or whatever, I should be ashamed or I'm unworthy or I shouldn't be around people. So because I sort of developed that conviction,
mm-hmm.
then it reflects in my level of anxiety. I can also do things that isolate me from other people to sort of act out those feelings that I feel about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I carry this list around with me, and when I start getting to the point where I feel like I can't even breathe when I'm out in public,
mm-hmm.
I'll go over the questions to myself, but I still don't know how to change. It says, where could you have changed?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the conviction that I'm inferior or less than or don't deserve, whatever. But I don't know how to change that. So eventually I just work on, like, when I meditate and breathe, I tell myself certain things like release, relax, and I try to calm myself down. But I sort of skipped over that step in the process because I really don't know how to let go of the way I feel about myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Containment is a multifaceted process, and it encompasses a lot of things. When we talk about containment at our website, it's generally in order to contain fear. And so when we look at our thinking process, we create fear by saying fearful things to ourselves, and we can stop those at the beginning. But when it comes to self-esteem issues, self-worth, and those things, that's where it's important to work with a therapist to change those core beliefs about yourself, because you can insert different types of thoughts to yourself about yourself, but unless those core beliefs are changed, you're only doing superficial work. Now, first off, are you working with a therapist on self-esteem and self-worth?
I haven't seen my therapist. I'm trying to get connected with one of the therapists on your website.
Okay.
One thing though is, like, because of those core beliefs, my reaction when I'm around people is just an automatic reaction to tense my core up. I don't have to be deliberately thinking those thoughts in my mind. I just immediately tense up like an animal that's afraid or something.
Yep.
So I thought, since that's the beginning of the process on your website of addressing anxiety, those are some of the first actual steps, Yeah. I thought that I should start with that. So are you saying that I need to go from the angle of my core beliefs, or?
It would certainly be faster. And why that is, because you're right. We have beliefs that we internalize as children, then they carry forward into adulthood. And then when we go into situations, they're going to activate automatically. They're subconscious routines that just run. And while we can say to ourselves, okay, calm down, don't tense up, you don't have to be tense here, or, okay, you don't have to be afraid. Those are all great. It'll keep your nervous system somewhat settled. But in order to make that real wholesale change, we have to go after those core beliefs, the ways we think about ourselves. Now, fortunately, we can. There's a lot of ways we can change an unhealthy self-opinion to a healthy one. It takes work. It takes digging down to where did those core beliefs come from, Are they actually true? When did we establish them? What would healthy look like? There's a whole series of things we do to help clients move away from the low opinion of themselves to a healthy opinion of themselves. And that's where really the benefit is going to come from in making wholesale change. Again, the other things, the containment aspects, they're more geared to keeping the body settled, and we can change our self-talk. Again, just like you said, go to an environment where you'd normally tense up. You can say, okay, I don't have to be tense or just relax here. You can use all those things, and they'll help you keep your nervous system somewhat settled, but it's not going to give you the depth of success that working with a therapist will in order to help you make that self-worth change. The reason is we have good reasons.
I wanted to ask. Oh, sorry for interrupting you. I wanted to ask, did you put the containment toward the beginning of the self-help program because you wanted people to work on stabilizing their nervous system before they got into the deeper issues? Is that why you put that closer to the top of the process rather than putting the core issues on the website, your lesson plans and information?
Yeah, we did that. We put the physiological recovery strategies first, and we did that because a lot of people struggle with symptoms primarily, and so to give them assistance with their symptoms, certainly calming the nervous system down is going to give them that assistance. The other reason is because when our nervous system is stimulated, the brain is going to think more anxiously. So one way to initially get to reduce and eliminate symptoms, we go after the body first. But as we do that, the brain also balances itself out so it's not as overly anxious as it normally is. So then as we're working on symptom reduction, then the next step is going after the behaviors that cause all the mess in the first place. That's kind of the order we put them in. Oh, if you're still muted, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. I also wanted to mention I have another diagnosis of bipolar. And so I have repressed anger.
Yeah.
And before, if I was not, if I was not regular with my medications, eventually I would just explode. During crisis mode, I would just explode, and years of things that I had kept inside would just burst out of me, and so I can sense the rage in me now, but I am on my medication, but I do know it's unhealthy, and I want to find some way to purge it. And not in a safe way that won't cause further damage, because obviously if you're carrying around these emotions, it's going to contribute to anxiety and depression, and I just don't know how to purge it safely. So
again, there's another real advantage of working with a therapist, going after those behaviors. Bipolar is another diagnosis that's very similar to anxiety disorder. Again, it's not a biologically caused condition, but it generally comes from the backgrounds we grow up in. People who come from difficult backgrounds can have episodes of manic episodes where, we go from one extreme to the other. And it's because we have all of this pent-up stuff inside of us because of the backgrounds we grew up in. Typically, there's abuse, there's neglect, and so on and so forth, all leading us to think things about ourselves that are unhealthy, and then those things come out in terms of behaviors. So the good news is we can overcome that as well by working on the underlying factors, which are often very similar to those that cause issues with anxiety. They're just a bit more complex and a bit deeper. But, from an overview perspective, it really comes down to how we think about ourselves. We have a negative opinion. There's a lot of frustration, anger, resentment that builds up because we've had some negative experiences. And so working through those negative experiences, processing them, and coming to a different place in terms of self-worth eliminates the bipolar behavior as well. And just like anxiety disorder, that type of work generally isn't something we can do on our own. We need an experienced person to guide us through the process. Our therapists are trained in that. And so there's, depending on the mix of underlying factors, our therapist will set up a care plan for you to sort of go at them in an organized way so that we're making progress little bit by little bit. And then, of course, as you keep moving forward in progress, it's like a domino effect. It gets easier and easier and easier as the earlier underlying factors are addressed, but it is a process that needs to be worked through. And unfortunately, it's not a fast one either, because when we're dealing with how we think about ourselves and all the things that have happened to us, all the injustices and so on and so forth, it just takes time to work through and process to come to a different place. But again, the good news is we can do it if we want to work at it.
Okay, so I'm guessing what you're saying, like the rage and anger may not be based so much on just people, but my core beliefs about myself. And if I'm carrying that around, then everything's sort of gonna get to me.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a combination of, it's not just one or the other, it's a combination, because it's a lot of things we have to process through to come to a different place about what had happened and about people and about what we think of ourselves and how we've managed ourselves. So it's a process that takes time to unfold. Yeah. But we can do it.
Thank you. I think, like I'm saying, I'm in the process of trying to connect with one of your therapists. If it doesn't work out, I'm gonna have to work with the one I have now, or choose another one within, who I can work with if I'm just not making progress. Yeah, I think a lot of this is, I don't know. I need to put in the work, and I need to make sure someone knows what they're doing when they help me. So,
Yeah.
But thank you for your response. Thank you. I'm gonna mute it now.
Okay. You're more than welcome. And working with a therapist is not unlike any other relationship. There are going to be sometimes personality conflicts. So if you're finding that the person you're working with isn't producing the kind of results you want, or isn't, working with you in the way that you'd prefer, always select another one. Because again, it's like choosing relationships. We have to find that good fit in terms of expertise and personality. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a while to find that right match. But when you do spend the time finding that right therapist, it's a wonderful bond. So I'd encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to keep going. It's difficult work, when it comes down to, behavioral patterns and beliefs we've had, since a young age. It takes a lot of times just to unsettle those and move them forward into a different place. But the good news is we can. That's the good news. So I encourage you to keep working. So, do we have another question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wish you every success with your work.
I've got stuff. Can you hear me okay, Jim?
I can. Mm-hmm.
Hi. I've been lurking on the site since like about 2016, and I've never actually made the time to come on the call. I used to work with Doug when he was more full time with you guys, and with Liliana a bunch for nutrition, and she's actually also very knowledgeable. And I just wanted to get a little perspective on where I am in my recovery, because I think I tend to, when I move a little further, when things shift, I tend to lose perspective and say, oh, what's this now? So I've been dealing with panic and general anxiety for many, many years. And 2019 was maybe the most stressful year of my life. And I had kind of lost some of the level 2 work that I had done. And I let a lot of the perfectionists behaviors come back, and all of that, and let my stress get up. And eventually it, blew up into a crisis mode again, full-blown anxiety. And I feel like there's definitely been a lot of shifting, and I've done a lot of exposure work with the panic. I was someone who, I couldn't go to a mall without feeling nauseous and dizzy. I live in New York City, and I couldn't walk on the street without feeling incredibly dizzy. And a lot of that's gone away in, not honestly, faster than I thought. It's been under 2 months where a lot of those symptoms have subsided. So I'm kind of surprised, pleasantly. But what I still notice is, and I'm doing really well with behaviors. I mean, I can't tell you how, on some level, and maybe when you were going through your journey, you felt this. on some level that when you really start to understand anxiety disorder and what caused it and what you do to contribute to it, there's like some really strange empowering and freeing aspect of understanding that we caused this. As you guys say on the website, it's not an it, it's us. And so I think like I've been making a lot of changes. I can go to a mall now, I can go to a party now, and I'll feel some sensations still, but nothing that's overwhelming. And I know over time, hopefully that doesn't even happen at all.
Yep.
But one thing that I noticed that's really, really still very strong, and it's the strangest feeling, is, I'm still waking up too early with like a jolt of just very anxious energy.
Okay.
And that, that anxious energy will kind of sit around for hours.
Yeah.
It's like, it'll just sit around till 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. It'll lessen, but it'll just be, I can't really sit still at home. There's that strong urge to move when I'm like, I really just want to sit and watch TV. And it feels like it feels so superficial. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's a layer, like everything that's me is underneath it. And like, I guess I'm just confused now as to what that is. Cause it's so strange because I've made so much progress with, like I said, with panic and with a lot of anxiety symptoms when I go out and live my life. I mean, I'm living my life like I have not lived in a long time. And it's really lovely. I'm going out and meeting people. I'm engaging in the world. I was a very, very, very shy person with very low self-esteem. I was one of those people who just never felt I had anything of value to add. So I would never talk to a cashier. I wouldn't talk to anybody on the street. I wouldn't engage, and there's something in me, I turned 40 this year too. So I think maybe there's a level of like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? Midlife and saying, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm worthy and I need to start living that way and feeling that way. So that's why I guess I'm confused with this overall anxious energy that really doesn't go anywhere. It kind of just cycles through. It doesn't cause many symptoms other than feeling really amped up.
Yeah. Okay.
And that seems to be like kind of all that's left with my disorder. I mean, I'm still quick to sensations when I do new things. Sorry, I'm on a street right now. My roommate was home and I didn't feel comfortable.
Sure.
So you might hear.
Yeah, not a problem.
And I'm in New York City, so. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
If that sounds familiar or sounds like it makes sense. I know that, one thing that I read on your site and on other sites, and Liliana had told me this. Sorry, it's going to pass in a second.
Yep, no problem.
Liliana had said this, and I believe Doug had said this, that like when you do start to do this work on your panic, and you do exposures and you do things every day that you used to give you panic, and you're going to feel the panic, it might shift to like it might get worse before it gets better. So yeah, I don't know. That's where I'm at. And I wanted your advice and opinion on what you think might still be going on. I know there's a cortisol aspect to it.
Yeah.
Probably. But if it's something that you've heard of, it feels like my level 2 is almost faster than my level 1.
Yeah. Sure. Well, let me ask you, on a scale of 0 to 100%, with 100% being maximum and 0 being none, how fearful are you of panic now?
Of panic?
Yeah.
I think maybe a 3.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think it's probably a 3.
Out of 100?
Oh, so out of 10. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Was it
Okay.
out of 100?
Yes.
I would say then 30 out of
30%.
100.
Okay. All right. So there's a little bit there yet, but you've come a long way, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing about overcoming, a fear of panic attacks, and that's usually what traps us in panic disorder, is that it just takes a long time. We often have a lot of triggers. We've had a lot of associations, depending on how fearful a person was of panic attacks. There's a lot of stuff to work through. And so even though we feel confident and are making good progress, there's still some angst underneath this. And that usually only goes away over time. And since your body is still amped up, that's suggesting that it still has some hyperstimulation going on. And we have to keep in mind, too, that hyperstimulation isn't just caused by elevated cortisol. It's one of the factors, but it's mostly caused by an accelerated nervous system where, the electrical activity in the nervous system is geared up. So we can still be hyperstimulated and symptomatic and feel all this energy, yet our cortisol levels can be down. So it's the combination of things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's just make sure it's just not all cortisol. But nevertheless, we call it hyperstimulation because that's what happens, and that's indicative of when we wake up in the morning and we feel ramped up. That's because the body has been through a rest period and is getting ready to go and sort of gives us that boost of energy and away we go. So very, very common, one of the most common telltale signs of hyperstimulation, especially first thing in the morning. Now,
oh my gosh, it's like the last thing. It's like not going away,
Yeah. But it will. That's the good news. It will. And, it's great that you're making those behavioral changes and seeing things differently and being determined to move. Those are all wonderful things. So it's really from here out, just getting that, constant reassurance to keep moving. I would suggest there's probably still some underlying factor things going on. And so if you keep working on them and keep working, you'll find that your body's stimulation overall will begin to drop. And then you'll wake up in the morning and you'll feel normal, not having these great big boosts of energy that you have to burn off in the morning. So you still got some ways to go. It's great that you've come this far, but there's still some distance yet.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think if being honest, I think something that you are right. I think something that still makes me very angsty, and it might be my number one fear right now, and unfortunately it was caused by a doctor, was in the height of this, I was in California for 8 weeks for work, and it was a very stressful time, and that's where it really ramped up, just because work was so insane, and it was just, I just felt so much pressure, and I started feeling really, oh my gosh, it was just, and like I was to the point I had to stand for like 10 hours a day, and for my job, and it was to the point where standing was, my legs were shaking, I was sweating, I was like in a constant panic, and my blood pressure was like way up, and I was having panic attacks constantly. And when I got home, I went to my doctor because I called her and I said, I don't know what's going on, this is really bad, am I sick? Like, I lost perspective of this being all anxiety.
Yeah.
And I went to her office, and I was still so hyperstimulated that, like, even a short walk in the city and then sitting down in an office, it was like my body was still exercising, It was just like buzzing, and I was having a panic attack, and she took my blood pressure, and it was quite high.
Yep.
And she was, we talked about anxiety, and she was like, well, you seem to know all the tools, so I don't think you're that anxious. I think we should put you on blood pressure medication. And I was like, well, I'm really having a panic attack right now. And she's like, well, anxiety and panic really shouldn't raise your blood pressure.
Oh my.
And ever since then, she's been like, well, we have to monitor your blood pressure. You have to take it every day. Take it in the mornings.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it's often elevated.
Yeah.
With this anxiety, I'm often around 140 over 90-ish. Since this anxiety started, and I've never had high blood pressure before. Right. When I'm calm, it's fine.
Yeah.
And she has been really on me to, take hypertensive medication and kind of really trying to push me that anxiety wouldn't cause blood pressure. So if I'm honest, I think the biggest fear I have is high blood pressure.
Okay, sure.
A health fear.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's like, what do I believe? Is the doctor right? Is this just, should I get on medication? Am I walking around with high blood pressure where I'm causing myself harm? Because I feel so amped up, and I imagine with all that energy, it's
Yep.
probably elevated,
Absolutely. Well, I'm a bit surprised that she said that anxiety doesn't cause high blood pressure and panic
She did,
attacks.
and it was in the middle of a panic attack, and I already know, it's probably not time, but I can tell you this funny story. I already know that when I'm in a panic state, that amygdala will learn anything negative,
Yep.
and it will stick for a very long time.
Yep. Yeah.
When you are in that kind of state.
Yeah.
So it just stuck with me, and it was just like, oh my God. Because it was probably 160 over 100, but I was in the midst of a panic attack.
Sure. Yeah.
And, then it went back down when I calmed down a little bit, but it didn't go back down to normal.
Yeah.
It still was elevated, but of course I was still amped up.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your resting blood pressure?
It's hard. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, it's so hard. It's hard to tell because I'm amped up a lot of the day.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty anxious.
Yeah.
Before this, my resting blood pressure was always 124 over 75. You know what I mean? It was always normal.
Yeah.
Now, I think the other morning I took it, and it was like 130 over 88.
Okay.
It's slightly elevated.
Yeah.
But of course these morning boosts are really strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel better in the evening, like mid-afternoon to late evening?
Typically. Typically.
Why don't you take your blood pressure then, like sit for about 5 minutes, and then take your blood pressure when you're resting in the evening rather than in the morning, and try to establish what your true normal resting rate is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know for a fact that blood pressure is tied to anxiety, especially panic, and it's supposed to be because, panic attacks and high adrenaline is supposed to increase blood pressure to get the blood moving to different parts of the body, and it does that by constricting blood vessels, which increases blood pressure. Yeah. So that, I don't think, was a healthy comment from your doctor. Now, she may have been trying to say that to calm you down or to suggest that maybe you do have high blood pressure and you need meds rather than panic, but, it's unlikely that you do. If you take it in the evening, you'll probably find it's better. Even 130 over 88 in the morning when you have your body stimulated isn't awful.
No, and it's come down. It has come down as the level of stimulation has come down. In California, when I was super stimulated, it was very commonly 150 over 95. You know what I mean? Yeah. And now I'm probably 50% less stimulated. I'm still stimulated, but it's certainly less.
Yeah.
So it does make sense that it's not baseline normal, but still.
Yep. When did you return from California? How long ago?
Early October.
Okay, so it's just a little while ago, yeah.
It's just a little bit, and I will say that the real recovery of getting back on track with the tools that the website provides and getting through and it really has only been about 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. Before that I had been like, oh, I got to get back on track, got to get back on the wagon and get over this. She, before the blood pressure, she was like, let me give you Lexapro, let me give you Wellbutrin, let me give you this, let me give you that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's going to take a lot longer for this to calm down.
How long were you in California? Sorry, you said a couple months?
2 months.
2 months, okay. And 2 months of high stress.
Well, it wasn't just 2 months. From the months of March to June in New York City, I had a show premiere off Broadway. I'm in theater. Okay. And it was kind of my biggest production to date. And the pressure I felt, that's when it really kind of started. That's when I started getting dizzy and feeling overwhelmed in social situations, but not in like more in like a my brain can't take it way.
Yeah.
And that started, and then I didn't get any rest before I had to go to California. And in fact, during that process, I had been flying back and forth to California a few times to survey theaters and have meetings. And so it was very stressful, and I was not doing anything to combat the stress, or frankly, cognitively, to not be a perfectionist and be, want to get everything right and do it perfectly, and want people to like me and stuff like that. So it was a year.
Sure. Okay. Now that you're back, are you able to set aside some time just to gear your nervous system down?
I do.
Okay.
I find New York City to be not the easiest place to recover from these things.
Sure. Yeah.
I definitely do. I do more in the evening. I try to get out because my days are so unstructured in terms of being in theater. I don't have a day job.
Right.
So, I'm still waking up a little bit early, from the overstimulation.
Yep.
So I do meditate in the mornings early. I kind of I don't know if this is the right thing, but I kind of stay in bed and do cognitive work and sort of meditate and rest, and to try to train my body to not have to give me so much stimulation in the morning that, like, no, this is still like sleepy time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
at 6:30 in the morning,
Yep. It's going to be difficult for you to do that in the morning, just because when the body's had some rest, it is going to crank up, and the cortisol cycle peaks first thing in the morning. So you'll probably not be very successful in training your mornings to be quieter, just because it's the overall picture you have to look at.
Okay.
So it's like, drinking 3 cups of coffee and then trying to keep your body calm. Well, it's kind of an impossible task.
That is exactly how it feels.
Yes.
That is exactly what it is like.
Yeah.
And it's like before light, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't really have anything to do until noon. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's 6 a.m. and I live in a 1-room apartment in New York City. It's like, well, it's clean. I can't do chores again.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't live in the nice area where I could go to the woods. I walk outside, and it's like, I live in Midtown Manhattan, so it's, I'm by Times Square.
Yep. Okay.
If you've ever been.
I haven't been, but I know it's pretty busy there. One thing you might want to try is, rather than staying in bed and trying to gear your body down, is maybe get up and do something. You'll have to find out what you can do just to give your body that opportunity to burn off those hormones. And then as you burn those off, you'll probably find it easier, because, again, the overall goal is getting the overall day stress down, not just a specific time in the day.
Right.
So, and if you can do deep relaxation in the morning when your body's cranked up, well, all the power to you, because that's a tough task.
No, I can't.
All right. Well, good. That means you still have, the cognitive control over it. It's not so far stimulated that it's just, being a wild animal. So that's good. But again, the overall goal is to do that during the course of the day, especially if you have stressful times in a day. Say, for example, there's things you have to do from noon to 4, and they're all stressful. If you can carve out, 15, 20 minutes in there somewhere just to offset that stress, it'll help in the evening. So we always want to be trying to offset that stress during the course of the day. So we're teaching the body to be calmer overall during the course of the day. So when it wakes up in the morning, it doesn't have to crank us up.
Right. I walk a lot. I walk a lot, and I'm up a lot during the day, like walking the city, running errands, and going back and forth to meetings.
Yeah.
I have learned to do that much more calmly.
Oh, good.
I don't know if you think that that's a good. I mean, I could certainly sit for 15 minutes in between and rest and find the places. But do you think it's too much? Do you think I'm overstimulating myself? That I'm usually out and walking about 4 or 5 hours a day.
Well, if it's a leisure walk, no. If it's hurried walk, yes.
Okay. It was hurried walk up until about 5-6 weeks ago, when I said, "Ooh, Mark, you got to slow down."
Yeah.
Because this is just keeping your body.
Yep.
Cranked up.
Yep.
With the rhythm of the city, I have to slow down.
Yeah. So if you can, gear your body down and take it as a leisure walk, give yourself more time to get from A to B, that will be helpful. I mean, anything that's going to keep your body calm is going to be a benefit. Even leisure walking is going to be a benefit, because you're burning off those hormones. I would suggest overall, based on your comments, you've had, a year of high stress, and it's going to take time to gear that body down. But as your body gears down, you're going to see your blood pressure drop.
Yeah, that's what I think, and I just keep telling myself, I do keep, when the thoughts come up, like, the fearful thoughts, I do keep saying, no, Mark, let's wait to make a decision on anything until after the body is more glued down.
Yep.
And I'll know what that feels like because I'll actually feel calm.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
right now it's not often that I feel calm in my body.
Yep. So you have a little bit of work to go, again, on both getting the nervous system cooled off, and there are still some behaviors, I suspect, at play. And as you work on those and get your body calmed down, I think you're going to see the recovery continue to unfold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I really appreciate it.
Sure. One thing too, just as a heads up, being a performer, you want to focus some of that behavior work on your performance, not in terms of how well you're performing, but how much pressure you put on yourself, what you're deriving from the performance, so that even the performances, while they're exhilarating, they aren't highly stressful. And a lot of times that will come down to self-esteem, self-worth, how you perceive in front of others, and so on and so forth. Working on those areas can really reduce a lot of that stress from an entertainment perspective when you're performing.
Right. Yeah. And I think that I agree, and that's really amazing. And that's one thing that I have worked to change. Right now I'm in between, so it's kind of like my downtime where I just kind of twiddle my thumbs and read a lot, But there is definitely that aspect. And I think finally, and then I'll end. I think the working on the panic end of this disorder and the social anxiety end of my anxiety, because I've had both.
Yeah.
I bet that also kind of cranked me up a little bit because I had to feel all that anxiety a lot for the past couple of weeks, like getting on a subway train and going into Brooklyn.
Yep.
I mean, I was so anxious doing it. I just ramped my body up, but I knew I had to do it because I knew I had to teach my body that it's not dangerous.
Yep.
Or I could do it with ease. Is that a good strategy, even though in the short term it might make things a little worse?
It is, and you want to be measured. Like we often see people when they want to overcome panic and they're starting to go into the exposure aspect of it, is to just really push it because they want to get through it. But you want to be a bit more measured. You want to push a little bit and give your body time to rest. So, some people will go and try to do something every day. They're trying to face their worst case fears every single day until they're over it. Well, that just cranks the body up, which makes the exposure process more difficult. So take a little bit more time. Look at the overcoming anxiety disorder as a long-term goal, not has to be done this month so I can get on with my life. It's we want to, go out, do those things, and then come back and give some time for the body to cool down and rest again, and then try it again. It's way easier that way because you're not elevating the stress again, making it more difficult.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely think that I did things a little too fast. Yeah. My main anxiety right now is honestly it's very hard for me to sit still in my apartment. Yeah. It feels it feels most of the day. In the evenings, actually, last night was like the first time in a long time, or last night I was like, oh, I actually feel almost normal.
Oh, good,
Whereas the night before, I was like spinning. It took me a couple hours to get to sleep. So I know there's shifts and changes happening.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is the morning. Really, it's just so strong. It's so strong.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody says the mornings are the worst. The mornings are the worst. It's the last to fix. It's the last to change. It's the last to change.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate. I'm so glad I finally got on the phone.
Oh, I'm glad you did too. Yeah. You're doing a lot of the really good things. Just give yourself a bit more time to let the body settle, and keep working on those things we talked about. You're doing it. So it's just a matter of time now, but don't be in a rush because we can't rush these final stages.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I know. And I just keep telling myself there is no rush. It's not dangerous.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable.
Yep.
It's just uncomfortable.
Yep.
And honestly, I think you said this on one of your calls recently, or maybe it was last year, because I've listened to a lot of them. I'm kind of getting bored. Like the anxiety is getting boring. Mm-hmm. The anxious thoughts are getting boring.
Yeah.
And as soon as that started happening, I did notice them starting to go.
Good.
When I was like, oh my God, I'm bored with that thought. But
good for you.
Like, that's so ridiculous. But I will say, and then I will leave. You guys were the first website that I found after my father died in 2012, and this first started getting really bad. So you guys really, really were a lifesaver, because I,
Wow.
I wouldn't even be here.
Wow.
I would probably be institutionalized.
Mm.
Things were really, really bad 6-7 years ago, and it's been a struggle ever since. But this is the first time where I finally feel like, I'm actually getting a handle.
Oh, wow.
So I
I'm
really
glad.
appreciate what you guys do.
Oh, well, thank you for your comments, and we're glad we can help. I mean, we do that to help people, so it's nice to hear those stories where you found some benefit. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
And keep up with your good
and I
work.
know it's
You'll
gonna.
get
It's
there.
gonna. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm gonna mute now.
Okay. It's a pleasure chatting with you.